Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Oh.
This is where we take the sources you send us, the things you're curious about, and really try to unpack them together.
Exactly. We dig in and pull out the key ideas.
And today, we're looking at a YouTube video a listener suggested. It's called 4 Things That Turn Boys into Men, might hurt your feelings, from a channel called Far From Weak.
Yeah, that title certainly doesn't pull any punches, does it? It signals right away we're probably in for some direct opinions on masculinity.
It really does. And, it's YouTube, so it's a platform with all sorts of viewpoints, often, expressed pretty strongly.
Sure.
Our aim here isn't really to, endorse or refute what the video says, but more to understand the 4 main arguments they're presenting.
Just break them down, see what the thinking is behind them.
Exactly. Okay, so let's dive into their first point. It's about responsibility.
Right. The video makes this pretty clear distinction between what it labels boys and men. Boys, in this view, tend to blame others. They see themselves as victims, kind of avoiding accountability.
Avoiding accountability. And how do they contrast that with men?
Well, the idea presented is that men take ownership. Even if something bad happens to them, the video suggests a man looks at his own part in it. Like, did I ignore red flags? That kind of thing.
Okay, so it's about recognizing your own agency, even when you feel like you've been wronged.
That seems to be the core message. There's this line in the video, something like, we are where we are in life, not because of other people, but because of ourselves.
Wow, that's a very strong stance on personal responsibility. Puts almost everything on the individual.
It does. It heavily emphasizes individual control over your life circumstances, which, is a perspective you find in certain self-help or philosophical circles.
But it also perhaps downplays external factors, systemic issues.
That's the counter-argument, isn't it? That it might overlook things outside an individual's control that genuinely shape their situation. It's a complex balance.
Yeah, definitely food for thought there. Okay. So, moving on from responsibility, the video connects this to the next point, the difference between talking and doing.
Yes. Point number 2 focuses on, let's say, boasting versus actual achievement.
Ah, okay.
The video talks about that friend archetype,
Yeah.
The one who's always bragging about conquests, money, how tough they are, but maybe there's not much substance behind it.
Right, the talker. We've all probably met someone like that.
And the argument is that this is boyish behavior trying to get status just by talking, whereas men, according to the video, understand it's about the work, the silent action.
So letting the results speak for themselves rather than needing to constantly announce your intentions or supposed successes.
Precisely. The video puts it very bluntly. Talk is cheap, and that action speaks louder than words. It's all about prioritizing tangible effort and results over just, noise.
Makes sense. Action speaking louder than words is a pretty common idea.
It is. But they frame it specifically as a key differentiator in this boy-to-man transition they're describing.
Okay. Now, the third point. This is one this video itself flags as potentially difficult for some people. It's about video games and pornography.
Yeah, this is definitely where the video gets more prescriptive, maybe even controversial for some listeners. Let's start with video games.
Okay.
Their reasoning is that video games are often designed to hit those sort of primal male buttons. Challenge, competition, status, conquest.
Right, the feelings of accomplishment you get in a game.
Exactly. But the video argues these achievements are, quote, fake.
Fake. As in, not real-world accomplishments.
That's the idea. The concern they raise is that getting too immersed in these virtual wins might actually, reduce your drive and ambition out in the real world. Like you're getting the reward feeling without the real effort or consequence.
That's an interesting psychological point about reward loops. Is it satisfying the need without actually achieving anything tangible?
That seems to be the crux of their argument there. It's about where you're directing that energy and drive.
Okay, and then the other part of this point was pornography.
Yes. And they frame this similarly, calling it a kind of fake conquest.
Fake conquest again. How so?
The argument is that it's passive observation, watching others, rather than actual interaction or engagement with, the opposite sex in the real world.
I see. So it's about displacement, replacing real connection with a substitute.
That seems to be the angle they're taking. They also briefly mention a potential link to physical side effects like erectile dysfunction.
Right. Okay. It's important we stress, again, these are the specific claims made in this video. There's obviously a lot of different views and research on both these topics.
Absolutely. We're just relaying the message from the source material you, our listeners, asked us to look at.
Okay. that brings us to the fourth and final point from the video. Emotional control.
This one touches on how men process and express emotions. The video suggests that society sometimes encourages men to express feelings in ways maybe more typical for women.
And the video argues that's not good for men.
It argues it can lead to negative outcomes. They actually cite violence as an example of what might happen if emotions aren't properly managed or controlled by men.
Wow, okay. That's a strong claim.
It is, and they state quite firmly that emotional control is one of the most fundamental pillars of masculinity.
A fundamental pillar. Did they elaborate on what they mean by control? Is it just suppression?
That's a key distinction they try to make. They argue it's not about just bottling everything up. It's more about detaching slightly from the raw feeling, looking at the situation objectively, and then finding productive outlets.
Productive outlets, like
talking to trusted friends or physical activity like exercise. They actually give an example.
Okay.
Yeah, they mention men who were bullied using that anger to motivate them to, say, get strong in the gym, turning a negative feeling into fuel for positive action.
So channeling the emotion rather than just reacting to it or suppressing it entirely.
That seems to be the ideal they're putting forward. They even mention a statistic connecting single-mother households among school shooters to a suggested lack of, quote, paternal discipline and order, which is, again, a very specific and potentially controversial link they're drawing.
Definitely a heavy point.
And
the overall message on emotions.
The video wraps it up by saying that with this kind of emotional control, men have shocking potential. So framing it not as limitation, but as a source of power and effectiveness.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap those 4 points from the Far From Weak video.
Sure.
First, taking responsibility, owning your situation. Second, action over words doing rather than just bragging.
Third, reconsidering, let's say, excessive time with video games and porn, seeing them as potential drains on real-world drive.
And fourth, emotional control, managing feelings constructively, not just reacting or suppressing.
Those are the core arguments presented.
And again, for everyone listening, remember, these are the viewpoints from this specific video. It's one perspective in a huge conversation about what it means to grow up, about masculinity, about personal development.
Absolutely. There are countless other ways to look at these topics.
So reflecting on these ideas we've just discussed, here's something to think about. What's maybe one trait the video might call boyish that you, in your own life, could consider reevaluating? Not necessarily to fit their definition of a man, but maybe just to help you reach your own goals or feel a bit more in control.
Yeah, just something to mull over. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hope it gave you some interesting things to consider.